We are in order. Welcome to today's meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California. You'll find us online at commonwealthclub.org, on Facebook and Twitter, and on the club's YouTube channel. Speaking of Twitter, which apparently has become even more popular, if you have not already done so, please take a moment, if you would, to turn off cell phones or any similar devices so the speakers will not be disturbed. The organization, this one, will soon be celebrating its 115th birthday. That makes us the oldest, largest, and longest functioning nonpartisan public forum in the nation. That's a mouthful. I was reminded of the fact moments ago that Theodore Roosevelt actually addressed the nation from one of our stages in 1907, and that has been repeated many times by others who followed him to the White House. The principal mission of this organization was, I think, stated best by its founder, Edward Adams, when he said, "We only propose to find the truth and turn it loose in the world." Perhaps now more than ever, that is a worthy instruction. For those of you who are already members, thank you. For those of you who are not, please consider joining. You will not be disappointed. How many are members in this audience, by a show of hands? Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Give yourself a round of applause. So, on with the main event. I am so very pleased to introduce today's distinguished speaker, Nancy Pelosi, Democratic leader of the U.S. House of Representatives, who is actually commemorating her 30th year in Congress. As the representative from California's 12th District, which consists of the city and county of San Francisco, as you know, Ms. Pelosi has led House Democrats for more than 12 years, currently serving as our minority leader. She had served as the first woman Speaker of the House and as House Democratic Whip, and perhaps will return to an earlier post as the Speaker of the House. The Christian Science Monitor called Nancy the most powerful woman in American politics. Politics most certainly runs in her family. A little background. Ms. Pelosi's father served as the mayor of Baltimore for 12 years, after representing the city for 5 terms in Congress, and her brother also served as the mayor of that city. Nancy's accomplishments in the Congress have included, and I can barely get through a list, there are so many. She led the House's passage of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. She was highly instrumental, as we know, in the passage of health insurance reform. She passed Wall Street reforms in place today. She passed child nutrition and food safety legislation. And working to repeal the military's Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, as well as championing college aid expansion. She has worked tirelessly to increase the minimum wage. And so very importantly, she helped to pass ethics reform legislation in Congress. In these uncertain times, what does the future hold for healthcare, jobs, the economy, infrastructure, the environment, women's rights, immigration, national security, and foreign policy? All of those subjects will be coming up today. So today, Leader Pelosi will be in conversation with Scott Schaefer, who's the excellent senior editor of California Politics and Government that you probably know about on KQED. They are going to discuss where America has been, where we are now, and most importantly, where we are headed. Please give a rousing welcome to Nancy Pelosi and Scott Schaefer.
Well, I see it's another hostile crowd. So, much of the reason for this conversation today is that this is almost to the day, the 30th anniversary of your very first election in 1987. I remember that election very well. I'm sure you do also. And Ronald Reagan was president at that time. You served under him for a bit. You served under George H.W. Bush and Clinton, George W., Obama, and now President Donald Trump. Yeah. And I just want to ask you, how is this administration, how is this president different?
Maybe we can go around the room and have a variety of Thank you very much, Scott, for your very curious question. I want to, first of all, thank the Commonwealth Club for the invitation to be here, to thank my friend Richard Rubin for his leadership, following in the footsteps of John Farmer, a great leadership for the Commonwealth Club. I'm happy to be here with Marcia. This is a family affair for us, and my daughter, Christine. But to all of you, thank you for your warm welcome. I always say to my colleagues in Congress, no matter what honor can be bestowed upon you, whether it's speaker or leader, whatever it is, there's no honor greater than to say that you are chosen by the people of your district, San Francisco, to be their voice, their representative in Congress. I consider that my greatest honor. So I thank you for this nice welcome back home. I loved what Richard was saying about the founder, Mr. Adams, of the Commonwealth Club. Find the truth and let it loose, and that's your mission, and that's what you have gained so much respect for as the Commonwealth Club. This, what was that? How is he different?
Yeah, how does it compare?
Or how is he the same?
What's different?
But what's different would be a long list. How is he the same? I can't even think of anything. But I know one thing about him, that America is a great country, and we've been able to withstand many changes in our country. But I see everything as an opportunity. It's just the way it is. Following the election, there was such an outpouring of concern, of recognition, a sense of urgency. And then what can I do? Taking responsibility. So urgency, responsibility equals opportunity. And an opportunity for our country to have a giant civics lesson, a civics lesson about the balance of power, the checks and balances that our founders wrote into the Constitution so wisely in order to implement the beautiful, beautiful preamble to the Constitution, our country's purpose, this Constitution's purpose. So it is an opportunity to follow the lead of Abraham Lincoln, who said, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. So I wish that our president would spend time in the White House and channel some of the former presidents who lived there and learn from their experience and their wisdom.
One of the things that has surprised me is how little effort there's been from the White House to reach out to those who didn't vote for him. I mean, starting with the inaugural address, which had no olive branches really, from day one. And I don't know that he's visited a state that he didn't win, other than New York, where he lives. What are your thoughts about that? And also the fact that he is the first president, I think maybe ever, who didn't have either prior military or government experience.
Yeah.
What difference does that make?
It makes a big difference when you think that yesterday was the 100th birthday of John F. Kennedy. Isn't that a remarkable thing? To think of his leadership. You mentioned military service. He was a war hero, really. And I was present at his inauguration. Now, you're too young, but you've read about it in the history books. It's history to you. It's my youth to me. And to hear, I was there as a student, okay, and to hear him talk about our country. And you all know the statement he made. The citizens of people of America, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Oh my God, the crowd went wild. But the very next sentence is one that I wish our current president would heed. He said to the citizen, the next sentence in the inaugural, to the citizens of the world, ask not what America can do for you, but what we can do working together for the freedom of mankind. Not in any way condescending. Not in any way condescending, but all very respectful. And that's something I think that whether it's not prior experience or in the military or in government, I think that the president would be well to heed, because condescension, lack of respect, it isn't who we are as a country. We're great enough. This is the greatest country that ever existed in the history of the world, I think, don't you? And so that respect that people have for us, we also have for them, for the freedom, that word, freedom of mankind. And I hope that our current president would understand that we're great because we're strong, we're great because we have values about freedom and liberty and justice for all. And we're great because we have fairness within our own country.
How concerned are you when you look at all the things happening, starting with the Russian interference in the election and what's happened since then with Russia, and we'll get to that in a minute, but how, countries don't necessarily go on forever, and some people feel that this is sort of an existential crisis for the country. I mean, how concerned are you? You said that the checks and balances are working to a certain extent, but on the other hand, Neil Gorsuch is now on the Supreme Court. I mean, they haven't really had to pay a price yet for their lack of collegiality or bipartisanship.
Do you think he wants to talk politics? I thought we were coming here to talk. Well, let me just say that the checks and balances are very important. That is so very, very important in our country. And yes, the court, elections have ramifications. The presidency has an undue impact on the third branch of government, the judiciary, the judicial branch. And so that is a challenge, and people have to recognize that when they vote or they don't vote. But the Congress, look, let me come back to public sentiment is everything. The only way that we will really have an impact on what's happening there is if people make known their views. Nothing is more eloquent to a member of Congress than the voice of his or her own constituents. People in my district, you're my bosses. Your voice is important to me. And so therefore, just as an aside, we have lots of people who are in districts who don't share our views necessarily, calling into their members of Congress, not us calling into their districts, but their own constituents calling in, so that the greatness of America is not in question. And I know countries come and go, greatness of countries come and go, but America is something so different. There's never been a country founded on the principle that all people are created equal. I mean, our founding documents left some things to be desired, but they also enabled amending the constitutions to expand freedom, expand freedom. So I don't think that we can be compared to any other experience that ever happened. They had the Great Seal of the United States, these founders. It's on the dollar bill. Does anybody carry cash anymore? It's on the dollar bill. Has that great pyramid with the eye that used to scare me when I was little. Anyway, the Great Seal of the United States, and it says on it, Novus Ordo Seclorum, a new order for the ages. They had so much confidence in what they did that they would be able to, that it would last for the age, and seclorum, forever. If you were a Catholic, you would know seclorum. It means forever. And that was predicated on the idea that every generation would take responsibility to make the future better for the next generation.
Let me just bring it back to politics.
And that is called the American dream.
We'll come back to Catholicism, I promise, because I do want to ask you something about that. But I asked you at the beginning, what's different, but you've worked with several speakers. You've been just a member of the House. You've been speaker. You've been minority leader now. Yeah. You've worked with Boehner. You've worked with a number of people. Yeah. What's different? What's different now? Because people are so unhappy.
Okay, you really want to know what's different? Just between us? You won't tell anybody I said this?
It's a friendly crowd.
Okay, here's the thing, and this is very important, since you persisted.
Good word.
What I have told the President of the United States is that we have been able to work in a bipartisan way with Republicans in Congress, with Republican presidents. And we always were able to make some success in a negotiation, make progress in negotiation, respecting each other's views, if we stipulated to a set of facts, evidence, data. And so, just between us, when we had our first meeting with the President of the United States, first meeting, House and Senate, Democratic and Republican leadership, around a table in the White House. We sat down to have our discussion. This is important. A new President of the United States. I've had this meeting with President Obama. I had it not when he was new, but when I was new with President Bush. The first thing the President said was, "Do you know I won the popular vote?" Now, first of all, it was irrelevant to our conversation, and first of all, it wasn't true. So I said, Mr. President, there's no evidence to support that, and that isn't true. Now, normally I would be a little more
forceful?
Respectful.
Oh, respectful.
No, I would be a little more respectful, let him say his piece. But, we're not going down that path. 3 to 5 million people voted illegally. And that's why it appeared that I did not win the popular vote. So I said, there's no evidence to support that. It isn't true. And then he says, I'm saying that, he says, and I'm not even counting California. So,
he never does.
But the reason that's an answer to your question, just between us, is that I said to Mr. President, we've been able to work with each other, Democrats and Republicans, with President Bush. As Speaker, we accomplished so much with Senator, the biggest energy bill in the history of our country. PEPFAR, HIV/AIDS, I don't know if that was mentioned earlier, but my first issue when I came to Congress, HIV/AIDS and the rest, we were able to do a long list, and I can tell you if you ask further pursue it, because we stipulated to a set of facts or a budget number that you could then negotiate from, whether it's Republicans and Democrats in Congress or whether it's vis-a-vis. So if you're not going to stipulate to a set of facts, it's going to be very hard for us to negotiate and make progress. So hopefully he will understand that data, evidence, facts matter if you're going to respect each other's point of view on a subject. You have to start with some understanding of what the situation is. That's how he's different. I have not served with the president, and I have a great deal of respect for all the presidents I served with, Democrats and Republicans. Of course, I was very junior with President Reagan. I did have some back and forth with President Bush on human rights in China, President Bush Sr. Same thing. I had the same problem with President Clinton. But nonetheless, just because you disagree on one issue doesn't mean that you don't respect each other in other arenas. And in my office, I have pictures with 3 presidents. One with John F. Kennedy when I was a teenager and my father was the mayor of Baltimore. 2 with Barack Obama on the 200th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. And the other one with George Herbert Walker Bush and Dorothy with their families. So I love them. And it's not this partisanship that is happening there in this kind of extreme way. It was not really.
So you have a kind of nostalgia for George W.?
Oh, I'd do anything to have George W. Bush. My picture is with George Herbert Walker Bush, the father. But I love President Bush, too, George W. Bush, because we found our common ground, even though we respected our differences. And so it's different if you're working with somebody who really doesn't share your values. For example, my Republican colleagues in their budget, they want to take the guarantee away from Medicare. Their theme is Medicare should wither on the vine. Well, that's a fight. That's a fight. Privatize Social Security. Cut $1.4 trillion out of Medicaid. $1.4 trillion out of Medicaid. Have a tax bill that they're talking about that will cost, is measured to cost $5.5 trillion over 10 years. $5.5 trillion over 10 years, taking us deeper into debt. That $5.5 trillion over time would solve all of any problems that Social Security would have for 75 years. So let's respect the facts, and then we can talk about what our priorities are and how we negotiate.
I want to come back to healthcare.
So he doesn't, I haven't seen evidence that he respects the evidence.
Yeah. The thing that's sucking up all the oxygen right now in Washington is Russia. Mm-hmm. What they did in the election, what Trump did during the transition, what his son-in-law did during the transition now is under scrutiny. We have at least three investigations. We've got the one headed by Robert Mueller. We've got one in the House and one in the Senate. Mm-hmm. How would you rank those 3 investigations in terms of both importance and most likely to get to the bottom of what happened?
Well, again, everything I said about the president, he needs to see the facts and respect the facts, holds true for everything about this investigation. I've been 7 years on the Ethics Committee. It's only about the law and the facts. So anything else is opinion, hearsay, whatever. So I think we have to get the facts. And an investigation within the Justice Department is progress. An investigation within the Congress is progress. Mind you, the investigation in the Justice Department reports to the Trump-appointed leadership of the Justice Department. Within the Congress, I'm very proud of Adam Schiff, and from our area, Jackie Speer and Eric Swalwell, who are serving so well on the Intelligence Committee. But that's within the Republican Congress. What we need to get all of the facts is an outside, not inside justice, not inside Congress, an outside independent commission to get the facts so that the American people will accept the result.
So are you saying, Robert Mueller...
And the other 2 are fine, but they're only part of it. We need the outside commission.
So when Robert Mueller was appointed former U.S. attorney in San Francisco, Willie Brown took credit for his becoming FBI director. So when he was appointed, there was like Chuck Schumer was very happy. I mean, there was across the board.
He's a great person.
But you're saying he can't alone. You're saying that investigation can't get to the bottom of it?
Well, what I'm saying is if you're going to have confidence in the results, it has to be something independent. And a special counsel, which is what he's called special counsel, is at his discretion as to what facts trail he will follow. And I have respect for him. But the fact is also this. FBI, they investigate wrongdoing and that's important. But what we're saying is there's something else that happened. The Russians hacked, leaked, probably altered before they leaked to undermine our democracy, our election. And we can't let that happen again. So whatever happens about who was in what meeting with whom, that's about Mueller. But in terms of the integrity of our elections, this is bigger than politics, bigger than Democrats and Republicans. This is about our country. And we have to have the integrity, not that they don't have integrity, but the certainty that every path was followed and not anything blocked by whatever the Republicans in Congress wanted to do or the Justice Department. Now, I support Mueller. I know him from here. I know him from the FBI. I think he's a person of great integrity. I also have a view of Sessions. I don't even think he should be Attorney General. But the fact is, and the fact is, that's where the chain of command is.
So I just want to be clear. So you're saying that no matter what happens, it's good that Mueller is doing his thing in the Senate and the House, but that until there is an independent investigation free from the administration or the Republicans in Congress, the party, you as the leader of your party, won't have confidence in the outcome. You won't feel that that's
No,
enough.
I'm saying the American people have to have confidence in it. The American people have to have confidence in the outcome. And I think that would give it... now, just for a little history, when 9/11 happened, I introduced the bill to have the commission in the Intelligence Committee. I was on Intelligence. I'm the longest-serving person in Intelligence in the Congress ever. I introduced the bill. My colleagues voted for it in a bipartisan way in the bill, in the committee. We took it to the floor a few days later, and the Republicans all abandoned it. This was the 9/11 Commission. They said it was traitorous for us to even want to find out. It was self-evident what happened and what was my purpose in doing this. I said, well, because we need to have the clarity of it all. We didn't get it. But because of outside sentiment, because the families wanted it so badly, it was reintroduced again at a time when the Republicans really couldn't say no, because the families were saying, we want to know the facts this way. Now, we had an internal, a House Senate. I was one of the co-chairs, being the top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, of the congressional investigation. That's where the pages, the missing pages, all that was out of that investigation. But still, we should have had the 9/11 Commission, which made it's a different animal. It makes recommendations, it took us to win the Congress to pass the recommendations of the 9/11 Commission, because they wouldn't even pass their recommendations. But this is important.
If you could get answers to one question or two questions, like just straight answers, full facts, what would the questions be? What questions do you have?
Well, one question which would unlock the door to a lot of other things is, let's see the president's tax returns. Because, we kind of know a lot of what went on. My ongoing question, since he wants to talk this way, is what do the Russians have on Donald Trump? Personally, politically, or financially? Let's see your tax returns so we can see if there's any connection there. They may be exculpatory of the president, but if they are, why isn't he showing to them? And if they are, why are the Republicans insisting that we not see his tax returns, which every president for the past 40 years has, or candidate, has shown their tax returns. So what is he hiding, and what are the Republicans' accomplices in his hiding that could connect the dots?
So I'm looking through, I just got handed a bunch of questions.
Okay.
A lot of them are about politics.
I thought we were going to talk about JFK and all the wonderful things.
But there seems to be a theme here with a few of these questions, which has to do with the message of the party.
Yeah.
There was a lot of soul searching for Republicans after the 2012 elections, and they decided they needed a bigger tent, and then they threw that away, and Donald Trump is president. But is there a version of that for the Democratic Party? What was the message, do you think? Because it was a stunner for almost everybody.
Yeah, shocking.
So what was the takeaway for the party?
Well,
and how do you learn from that and, and prepare for 2018 and 2020 ultimately?
Well, right now we're preparing for 2018, and what's similar to that is what we did in 05 and 06 in order to win the Congress for the Democrats and for the American people. At this point in 05, President Bush was at 58%. 58%. He had beaten Kerry coming into the new year, 58%. And we knew that we had to make sure the public knew the difference between Democrats and Republicans in terms of policy and what it meant in their lives. So we had a very strategic, disciplined, unified approach. We had a plan, and the members subscribed to it. By September, October, President Bush was at 38%. That's when you recruit your candidates. When the president's at 38 of the other party, you do well. The issue in the presidential is the main event of politics. It has everything, right? It has glamour, it has power, it has money, it has celebrity. It's everything. That's when people look up and pay attention. So this is a big year for the distinction to be made between Democrats and Republicans. Unfortunately, with all the things that were happening, our message about jobs and working families and the rest did not come forth with clarity. As far as, and I'm talking about the presidential, in terms of the Congress, we walk the walk. We fight that fight every day, but we didn't talk the talk. I guess there's some thought that we should have been more aggressive in saying this is who they are. So you have to balance between, are you a fearmonger or are you just making a contrast? But if just making a contrast isn't enough, then you just have to make sure that people know what this means in their lives. And so as we go forward, we look not to what happened in this election, because that was a presidential, and that wasn't our responsibility. But what will happen in the next election will be similar to what we did in 05 and 06. What does it mean? And the big difference between Democrats and Republicans, and this is the fight we have every day, Republicans trickle-down economics. It's their philosophy. It's what they believe. Trickle-down economics. If it creates jobs, that would be good. If it doesn't, so be it. That's the free market. That's what they tell us every day. That's what they're proud of. I'm not being negative right now. I'm saying what they're proud of. On our side, we're talking about middle-income economics, when we're talking about increasing the paychecks of working families in our country, which is truly the way to grow the economy, because when people have consumer confidence, then they spend, inject demand into the economy, create jobs, reduce the deficit. And when you reduce the deficit, you don't go back now to the Republican side when they say, well, we want to have a $5.5 trillion tax break for the wealthiest people. And in order to afford that, we're going to cut food stamps. We're going to cut $7 billion out of the National Institutes of Health.
But in fairness, that's the Trump administration. That budget was dead on arrival, according to Republicans.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that budget is exactly what the Republicans have put forth. That was the Ryan budget when he was chair of the Budget Committee. This is who they are. The tax bill that I talked about is the Republican in Congress budget, the $5.5 trillion. It's their budget. So Trump is their guy. And if you say to me, when are the Republicans going to say this isn't right or something. No, this is who they are. They have the budget. It's supposed to be a statement of our national values and what we care about is what we're supposed to invest in for the future. So the president said in the campaign, the budget he just sent is his budget. It's very similar to the Republican budgets of past years. Price's budget, who's now HHS, Ryan's budget, who's now Speaker of the House. And by the way, the Republican budgets in Congress are sometimes worse than Trump's budget because President Trump has not yet said that he would undo Medicare, but the Ryan budget takes away the guarantee of Medicare, and Medicare is a guarantee. And so you asked exactly the right question. Not in all fairness. In all fairness to the American people, their budget, his budget, very much the same. Right. Very much the same.
I just want to say for the benefit of our radio audience, you're listening to the Commonwealth Club of California, and our guest is Nancy Pelosi, Democratic leader of the House of Representatives. I'm Scott Schaefer, your moderator. Mm-hmm. You can hear Commonwealth Club programs on the radio, catch up with program videos on the club's YouTube channel, and visit the club on Facebook and Twitter. You know, one of the things that, there are many things that have people turned off to politics right now. And one of them is that there doesn't seem to be, and we've you alluded to it, there's no, the Civil Rights Bill, the Voting Rights Bill, they would not have passed without significant support from Republicans, right? Because the Southern Democrats didn't want it. Is there any hope for that on issues like immigration or health care? I mean,
well, is there any hope? There's always hope, and every situation is an opportunity, and you have to be optimistic. But right now, for example, the court rolled back the Voting Rights Act and said Congress can fix this. And Congress refuses to fix it. We have obviously every Democrat on a bill, which in my view is it's a compromise bill. A lot of people out the outside are saying that's not good enough. It's the bill that we think the Republicans will do. They won't give us a vote. They'll show up in Selma. They'll come to the unveiling of the statue of Rosa Parks or all that stuff. But they don't bring up the Voting Rights Act. Immigration bill in the Senate. There was a bipartisan immigration bill. They wouldn't bring it up in the House because...
This is in the last session?
Yeah, in the last session. Yeah. They would not bring it up in the House.
But let me ask you.
But where there's reason to be hopeful, we hope on infrastructure because that's never been partisan. Except when President Obama brought it up, of course, they would block it, obstruct. But it's never been partisan.
Well, they killed Caltrain, too, recently.
Well, now we got it back.
You got it back.
And don't believe what you read in the paper on Sunday. It had nothing to do with Republicans. It had everything to do with Anna Eshoo, the 39 Democrats in the House, Dianne Feinstein working very hard on this. It was about jobs. It's about clean air and that. And by the way, a lot of local commitment of funding for it as well.
What about, you take immigration, which is obviously a very divisive issue right now and has been for some time. It seems to me that if Democrats were to give, say, on citizenship and say, let's just have legal status for the 11 million or so undocumented immigrants, so they'll be they don't have to worry about being deported. They don't have to worry about families being separated. Why not? That to me is like a compromise. Are the Democrats willing to do something like that?
Well, let's just describe America with liberty and justice for all. Now, you can work here, but you can't vote here. That would be not even second-class citizenship because you're not even a citizen. That's really more about who we are as a country. Path to legalization is a long path. And that should be a path to citizenship. And by the way, the American people overwhelmingly support a path to citizenship. You have to get back of the line of everybody else who's in line, shall we say, with full documentation.
But I think Democrats see that as a way to enlist a whole bunch of new Democratic voters.
But now you're doing the Republican line.
Well,
no, it's about America. You don't have people. And how about we criticize countries that import all these workers from the Philippines and other places and have them do their work and say, but you can't vote.
So what are Democrats willing to compromise on then on that issue?
Well, the Republican bill, the compromise bill in the Senate is not the bill that I would have written. It was certainly not, but it was a compromise bill. And any bill, look, we have principles that I think everyone shares. We have a responsibility to protect our border. We have a responsibility to protect our workers and the immigrant workers coming into our country. We want to have legalization so that people have that comfort of somebody not knocking on their door at night, as they do. And we want to have a path to citizenship. It's a long path to citizenship.
So that's non-negotiable.
In my view, I'm talking personally for myself and the House Democrats and many Republicans, because what you're doing is not changing what happens to that person. You're changing what happens to America. And it's so funny that so many of the people who are, I don't think it's funny in the sense of strange, that so many people who are opposed to immigrants coming are from immigrant families themselves. And look, we are a nation of immigrants, except for those that we're blessed to have among us who are Native American people. Immigration is the constant reinvigoration of America. When people come here with their hopes and their dreams, their aspirations to make the future better, they are connecting with that new order for the ages of our founders. It's called the American dream. And when they come with that determination, that optimism, that hope, that courage, those are American traits. And when they come, they make America more American. Yeah. And when they come, their rights should be respected, and that's the law of the land. And that's the way I feel. It's not an easy path to citizenship. You get behind everyone else in line.
How much of the divide that's happening in the country right now? You used a phrase before about it's what's going to happen to the rest of America, and I think certainly Trump overtly and with sort of dog whistle messages during the campaign suggested. In fact, he said, "This is your last chance to vote to save America." How much of all the division we're hearing and the fact that his support is so solid despite what's happening in the country, how much of that do you think is just pure concern about not just having a place at the table, but not owning the table anymore? Somebody else is going to own the table.
That's not the point. The point is for the American people to have a victory. Elections are about two things. They're about who wins the election, who takes the seat, or about how people who are running for office know that they're going to be held accountable. I care about a woman's right to choose. I care about preserving the planet. I care about fairness in our economy and the rest. And if the Republicans wanted to negotiate about that, that would be good. That's not who these are. I say to my Republican friends, take back your party. So this isn't about power, as you implied it might be, or I inferred from your remarks that it might be.
Well, I think it's fear of being overtaken, the white majority.
Those people, they have a legitimate concern in terms of they think they haven't had their turn. They hear about women and minorities and LGBT and this or that, but what about me and when is it my turn? And it's always been their turn. We haven't made that clear to us, and that is where we should be held accountable for making sure people know that the fight that we fight, we're all Americans, we're all in the family. I said to Norman Lear, name dropping, Norman Lear, your show, All in the Family, was so perfectly named because you had Archie Bunker and Meathead. I mean, if anybody's ever watched it, the liberal and the conservative in the family. We're all in America's family. So nothing that we do should be viewed as at the expense of anyone else. It's not a zero-sum game. And that's the message that we have to put forth, because we have big challenges ahead of us. Innovation in terms of artificial intelligence, issues like that. Some of the conversation we're having is one we could have had 10, 20 years ago, absent the new president of the United States.
I notice you don't say President Trump.
It's hard.
Is that a thing? I mean, do you avoid that? I mean,
I've never heard him say it either.
You what? Say that again?
I've never heard him say it either.
But is it hard? It is hard to say it.
Well, when I was listening to my dear friend Richard say things about the most powerful woman in the state, well, I'm the highest-ranking woman politically in our country, to be Speaker of the House, President, Vice President, Speaker of the House. It's the third highest position, and leader is a very significant position. And so one of the things that I was looking forward to Election Day is when finally there would be a woman who would be the highest ranking woman practically in the world as President of the United States. So, it was a blow. I mean, for the country. Yeah, for the country. Yeah. And so it is, it's hard because I don't know, from what I've seen, I don't know how much respect he has for the job. That's why I feel I can speak frankly to him, because he's casual. But he just went to Europe. Now, when he was away, I was in some nations during what was then the Memorial break, an earlier break leading up to Memorial Day. I was maybe in 5 countries. 4 of them where we met with everybody, the highest-ranking people in the country, and they, the leaders of the country, they would never be critical of the president or anything. We're just talking about our bilateral relationship in those countries. Any trip that you take, this might be interesting for you to know, any delegation that you take, ours was bipartisan, is about our national security, our economic security. So it's about our relationships in terms of global security, homeland security, personal security. It's about our economic security. How is our economic relationship so that we're creating good-paying jobs in America as we lift people up in the world? And it's about our values security, the security of our democracy. And on the values question, we visited the Dalai Lama in India. We visited the home of Mahatma Gandhi, and just to be energized by values that are very respectful. You might find this interesting. His Holiness Dalai Lama, Scott knows from the past, that I've been a big supporter of the Holiness Dalai Lama for 25, 30 years, almost 30 years. And one time I was visiting him in India with a bipartisan delegation, and they were telling us that this was in 2008 when the Chinese were really cracking down on the Tibetans. And so when we heard this, when we had a luncheon with all the lamas, hundreds of young lamas coming together with our delegation, I said, if we do not speak out against human rights in China and Tibet, we lose all moral authority to speak out against human rights anywhere in the world if commercial interests prevent us from speaking freely. My speech is over. And I said, and this member is going to do this, and this member is going to give visas and education and this subject and that subject. So when it's over, I yield back to His Holiness, and His Holiness gets up and says to the lamas, let us all pray that we can rid Nancy of her negative attitude. So the point being is that we freedom, liberty, as President Kennedy said, freedom of mankind. That's important to us, and how we do this is how we come together or not. But we have a real challenge in our country because, so anyway, my whole point of that is when we met with members of the civil society to talk about human rights in their countries, they would start on Trump, and I said, look, we did not come overseas to criticize the President of the United States. We do that back home. But we don't do it overseas, just as a tradition, as a protocol. If that's what you came to do, we're not doing that. We want to hear about how we can work together. So, so while he was away, and we were away, now he's back, and we're back, I can say the very idea that the president would put in question the mutual agreement that we have under Article 5 of NATO is a gift to Vladimir Putin. It's a gift to Vladimir Putin. So we can disagree with his policies. It doesn't have to get personal about him.
So speaking of personal, there's a few questions about your, not everybody knows where you came from. I mean, I think people know you're from Maryland, Baltimore. And you mentioned that there's that picture, which I was actually looking at as I was getting ready for this, of you in that long dress with President Kennedy. I think he was in the Oval Office, maybe. And you were little Nancy, right? I mean, what are your earliest memories of politics and growing up in that very political family? Your dad was mayor of Baltimore. He was in Congress. Your brother also, his brother, your uncle, also in politics.
No, my brother.
Your brother as well.
Yeah, no, my brother was. Well, in our family, I was born into a family that was, I was the seventh child, the first girl. And our family we grew up in a very Italian-American neighborhood. People called it a ghetto, this, that, but we didn't know that. We thought it was heaven on earth. And very ethnic Italian Catholic neighborhood. So we were about a family that was fiercely patriotic, loving America, devoutly Catholic, proud of our Italian-American heritage, and staunchly Democratic. And that's how we grew up. And we saw the connection between our religion and our party. Not that you want to mix church and state, but in terms of our responsibility from one another, sense of community. People were always coming to our door for food, whatever. And anyway, we grew up knowing that public service was a noble calling, that we all had a responsibility to each other, and that the Gospel of Matthew, when I was hungry, you fed me, was our guide. And so that's how we grew up.
What did your parents see for you in your future? What did
Oh,
they see
my
you
mother
being
wanted
speaker?
me to be a nun. I don't think so.
Did you? And you didn't see that?
No, I didn't see that. I don't know why. I just didn't see it. But but she thought that would be the most wonderful thing, that her daughter would be a nun. So once I was telling them at Dominican University, I was speaking over there, and I told them that story, and my mother wanted to be a nun. And somebody from the audience said, "It's not too late." But it's important to know this, that as democratic as we were, part of that was to be respectful of other people's views. Part of it was to have a sense of humility about somebody else might have a better idea. And so the Republicans were our friends. It wasn't like this.
Well, it's interesting. I was just listening to someone who does research into religion and politics, and around that time, 1960, on some Gallup poll, they asked, how upset would you be if a member of your family married somebody from the opposite party? And it was like 4 or 5%, like not too good. They didn't care. Now that number's up to about 45%. Yeah. And so I'm wondering, you described your family as very Catholic, very traditional in some ways. I mean, and you had some interesting comments about choice and abortion, and Democrats, and whether you can be a Democratic candidate, and be pro-life. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, let me again say how happy I am. My daughter Christine is here with her Democratic husband, Peter.
How would you have felt if she'd married a Republican?
Well, my other daughter did, yeah. She lives in Texas. We're just fighting for the hearts and minds of the children right now.
Well, the Democrats keep saying they're going to turn Texas blue, so maybe that's...
Well, we're working on that. I'm going there tomorrow. This afternoon I'm going to Dallas, and tomorrow I'm going to Houston, and we have tomorrow we have a resistance rally in Dallas first, and then on to Houston. So if I just may mention the Resistance Summer, that is very important. It's for the public sentiment to reveal itself. One of my friends, one of my dearest friends in Congress, he's a Republican, he was a Democrat and a Catholic. And he ran in Alabama statewide, and he didn't win. And they said nobody will ever elect a Democratic Catholic in Alabama. So he said I had to change something, so I changed my party. I couldn't change my religion.
And it worked.
Sonny Callahan, yeah. Well, he came to Congress. That's how I got to know him.
Yeah. So in terms of Ken, I mean, how, there's on so many things. I mean, I saw you at a town hall meeting after the healthcare.
About choice. You want to say about choice?
Yeah, but and I'll just expand on that a little because I saw you and Jackie Spear at the town hall meeting the day or a few days after the healthcare bill died the first time. Right. And this couple weekends ago up in Sacramento at the state party convention, I mean, a lot of the energy is for single payer.
Right.
That's their litmus test. Mm-hmm. And, what do you think of that? I mean, not single payer, but, the idea of letting, I mean,
a Democratic candidate be. Well, here's the thing. I think I have some very strong credentials in this regard. I was raised in an Italian Catholic family. Most of my family is not pro-choice. They respect my point of view. They wish I could soften rid myself of some of my stronger attitudes out there on the subject. I say, look, to my colleagues, I have 5 children. The day our baby came home from the hospital, that week, my oldest child turned 6. When you have 5 kids in 6 years, you come around and talk to me about it, okay? And then they say, oh, Nancy, she thinks she knows more about having babies than the Pope. What? Yes. Yes. So, whatever you believe, I grant you your position. Well, I'm talking about taxes, whether we're talking about immigration, I grant you your position. And when it comes to a woman's right to choose, I grant you your position for your life, but not for everybody else's. You cannot make those judgments. You cannot make those judgments. And
so it would be
when
okay.
They ask about a candidate, well, to me, I mean, when I was Speaker, we had a number of members in our caucus who were, shall we say, worked with the bishops on some of the issues. But here's the thing. This isn't... My whole family, all they do, they're dedicated Democrats forever, and they're not openly pro-choice. Maybe some of the younger generation of them is, but we really don't even talk about it. I was just in Baltimore for Mother's Day. We didn't talk about pro-choice. But I don't think that any party should be saying that your membership in the party should be where you stand on a personal decision like that. And I'll just add this one other point on that. This is, I would wish we could join with the bishops and the others in the Catholic Church in saying, let's make a major investment in biomedical research for fertility and infertility, so we can help people want to have babies, and we can have opportunities for people to time and size their family according to what they want. But to say to people, no, mind you, this is not about abortion. For decades I've served in Congress, and for decades I've had to fight the Republicans' opposition to birth control, contraception, and family planning. They do not believe in it. And a lot of those people voted for what's his name?
Yeah.
The President of the United States. I'll honor the position,
Yeah. So what is the deal breaker then for a candidate if they can be pro-choice? I mean, can they be against gun control? Can they be against, gay rights? I mean, where do you draw the line? What makes somebody a Democrat?
No, look, in our caucus, let me just tell you about my caucus. Over 50% women, minorities, LGBT. This is a remarkable thing. Never in the history of parliamentary governments has there ever been a party so diverse. And people say to me, oh, you do a good job keeping them together. I don't. I don't unify them. Our values unify us. Our values about working families in our country, about fairness in our country, about liberty and justice in our country, about preserving our planet, and the rest. Are there different views on how we go fast, this slow, and this or that when it comes to environment or guns or immigration? I think is what we have gotten behind in terms of guns is common sense background checks, and everybody supports that. Yeah. Whether you go to other kinds of issues, maybe some will be on board, some will not. But we don't have anybody who's anti-LGBT. I mean, we don't have that. And even on the issue of a woman's right to choose, I said this and it was misinterpreted. I said it's not an issue in our caucus because hardly anybody is not on board with that.
Yeah. We're a little short on time, but I've been weaving people's questions into my question.
Oh, a single payer? If you want single payer, get a public option in California. Now, what is at our convention, as you said, people are talking about single payer. I was carrying single payer signs when my kids were in strollers, single payer, 30-some years ago. But they just priced it, $400 billion for single payer.
In California.
In California alone, and half of that money, $200 billion of it, would come from the Affordable Care Act. So we must protect the Affordable Care Act, give you options to do whatever you want.
Okay, so a couple of quick questions here. Would you rather have President Trump or a President Pence?
That's really up to the Republicans. No, I think I'd rather have President Bush. I think this Vice President Pence is a sincere, authentic, arch conservative. You know, that's who he is. God bless him. That's what he believes, and that's who he is. I don't know what President Trump believes. Do you? I don't know. He said in the campaign that he was going to rid the world of the misery of disease and cut $7 billion out of the National Institutes of Health. He said there was going to be clean air and clean water for our children and ransacked the EPA budget. I mean, you go through the whole list. It's just an amazing just rejection of his own promises. So I don't know where he is, but I do know that he has a popular appeal to about a third of the country that is strong. What is he at, like 37, 38 right now? I think some of those people are not always going to be there, but say a third of the country. He has a popular appeal based on things that I won't go into right now, except the issue of taxes. A lot of those people just trickle down. That's where a lot of this, that's how we got elected, trickle down. Anti-trade, anti-woman's right to choose, and Pence is again ideological, but I don't know that he arouses public opinion in the same way.
So you prefer him, you're saying?
Well, I mean, I think that how would we get President Pence?
I think there's a question about impeachment. I mean,
but I mean,
no, I mean, he would have to either quit or he would have to go away, one way or the other. One way.
I don't know. I don't know. What I'd like to see is a Democratic Congress in 2018. To be part of the checks and balances that our founders fought for in the Constitution of the United States. And that in that election, when that happens, we'll either win, or the American people, I would consider them winners if we did, but they could also win by holding Republicans accountable. And I'll close by saying this because you said something about the disenchantment of the public with politics and the rest. One of the biggest things that we can do to remove the skepticism and the cynicism about politics is reduce the role of money in politics. Overturn Citizens United. Overturn Citizens United. We must do that. It was a terrible court decision. We must overturn that. And when we do, another thing that made a decision when I went to Congress, and I acted upon it, and we've had a level of success. A third of our caucus are women, minorities and LGBT too, but a third of our caucus are women. That brings up Congress's average considerably when you see where the other parts of the Congress are. But nothing is more wholesome for our political process than the increased participation of women in government and in politics. Yeah. So I say to women, know your power. When I went there were 12 women, now there's 65 on the Democratic side. Yeah. There were 11 Republicans. I'm not sure if they've reached 20 yet, because we made a decision, that, not that, gentlemen, I have the highest regard for you. It's not that women are better, it's that the beauty is in the mix, and we must have women at the table, and even at the head of the table.
Yeah. All right, well, we've reached the point in our program where there's time for only one last question, which I'm sure is of great concern to you. And I don't really know how to end, but I guess maybe something sort of big picture, looking ahead. I mean, what emerging issues do you see that are like maybe we haven't focused on yet? Or what is there a person that you say, keep an eye on that person because they're going to be a leader in a few years? I mean, when you look ahead, what do you see?
Well, let me just say, first of all, thank you to the Commonwealth Club for all that you do and for your hospitality. It's wonderful always to be here, and some of us were sharing a memory that in 2002, it was a couple days after the election that year in November, and the day after the election, Dick Gephardt said he wasn't running for leader, so I jumped in. That would be Wednesday, and by Thursday I had the votes to be leader, and that night I was receiving a Commonwealth Award by previous design, so we turned it into a celebration for my becoming leader, and that very first night I spent with friends at the Commonwealth Club. So again, it's always a pleasure to be with you, including today. I think that we have to return to a place where there's a higher regard for, important decisions are made that affect the future, and people have to be interested because the future affects them, especially our young people. And the challenge that we have is, how do we have an economy when we see that is fair, when we see this disparity of income just being so grotesque? 40 years ago, is maybe the CEO made 40 times the worker. Now it's more like 350 or 400 times. That's just not right. But apart from that, we have all of this innovation that I referenced before. So one of the challenges that we have, the biggest challenge we have, is to protect the planet. But we didn't go into that whole subject. But in addition to that, when we have robots and artificial intelligence, which are cheaper than workers, no legacy costs, no pensions, no health care, no nothing, and then you have robots supervising robots, and right now, that's cheaper in the U.S. than it is than having humans. And in Mexico right now, humans are cheaper than robots. But that won't last. And so in the world, you'll have this situation where good jobs, well, I don't know how much, they don't pay that much in Mexico, but good paying jobs here in our own country, as well as jobs, are being taken up by innovation. So innovation becomes almost like a scary, menacing word when it really isn't. And I do believe that we have all of the native intelligence and the values and the know-how to create an economy that recognizes change, where the Industrial Revolution, the technological revolution, and now another technological revolution is not a job killer, but is a job creator. And we have to look at how we respect the value of work, how we respect the value of work, and that successes on the stock market are not just because of the CEO, it's about the workers who produce all of that as well. So it comes back to, if I ruled the world, the one thing I would do, of course I would have a consensus building operation to decide what it would be. But having said that, I would educate the women and girls of the world. Educate the women and girls of the world, to lift them up. So we have some challenges, and they are not partisan. They're about who we are as a country. So let's find as bipartisan a path as possible. Let's reduce the role of money so that people feel more respectful of the outcome of elections. And nothing suppresses the vote more than big money in elections, confusing the issues, turning people off. So again, we have to, it's about those three things: how we protect our country, leading with our values; how we protect our economy by being fair and having opportunity; how we protect our democracy by, again, making sure that we not only remove obstacles to participation, like as some states have, but also remove the oppressive, suffocating impact of money in the process.
All right, well, I've got this gavel here, which I feel like you should have as the former
I
Speaker.
love gavels.
Our thanks to Nancy Pelosi, Democratic leader in the U.S. House of Representatives. Also, thanks to everyone on the radio, television, and internet. I'm Scott Schaefer. Now this meeting of the Commonwealth Club is adjourned.